start with Centum's results that's just come out. We know their profits have dropped. Is that purely because cement prices have skyrocketed?
And a good afternoon to you too. Well, yes, Centum has had, they've posted their results, but we may not really narrow it down to just the issue of the cement prices. If you look at Centum in terms of its investment portfolio, it is actually a trading company. And also one other thing that we need to remember is that they purchased a larger stake in capacity investments, about 22 point something percent, about 3 or 4%. And that would also impact a lot in terms of their operating profits, which they say have increased tenfold. Also the issue of dividends. There's some dividend payments that have been delayed in terms of them receiving the dividends.
Well, talking about the dividends, Centum has proposed no interim payment dividends. How are the shareholders taking to it?
Well, I'd look at it from 2 points of view. If it's a long-term perspective and also the short-term. Right now, the markets have not been good. We've actually come through a year that has been very tough for a lot of investors and a lot of companies. And then looking at Centum in terms of its portfolio, it has invested in a lot of blue-chip companies too. So if we're looking at maybe they're gearing to a long-term approach whereby in the next quarter they'll be able to declare much more profits and hence give dividends. So if you're looking at short-term, then that would be a disappointment. But if you're looking at the long-term approach of it, then yes, it still is a viable investment to remain in.
This results out of Centum, how exactly is this going to affect Carbacid?
I would say looking at their approach, they ended up, Carbacid had been for the longest time not trading in the market. It actually had been suspended owing to a takeover that didn't go well. And what I would say is that Centum more or less would say it was a knight in shining armor who came to break the deadlock by purchasing a certain percentage in it, a stakeholder in it, in Carbacid, which also allowed for Carbacid to come back to trade in the market. And this has unlocked a lot of investors who had been kept out from the market for a long time.
Well, going forward, what other opportunities is Centum hoping to attract?
Well, I'd say going by its model has been unique. It's actually the largest trading company within East Africa in terms of what it holds. Its ideals and models, you'd not be able to get an investment into some companies like General Motors, what you call the insurance company, Aon Minet. Through Centum, you're able as an investor to benefit from that potential because all they do is that they more or less invest in them and you partake a stock in this company. And going forward, if you look at actually the growth of some of these key industries, it's actually a bigger picture. The bigger picture is positive. So I would say do not be disheartened.
All right, let's take a look at big stories coming out of Kenya for next week. MPC meeting. Will the central bank keep the rate unchanged at 7.75%?
I'm hoping they would lower it, but they also have an issue. The Monetary Policy Committee, has been complaining that banks are not lowering the rate or they're not taking advantage of the repo rates that have been lowered. They lowered it by 0.25 basis points the last time, but we were waiting to see if they're going to maintain it at that 7.75 or to spur growth even further, they would lower it maybe by 0.10, which is subject to speculation. But what is known is that the Monetary Policy Committee is there to spur growth. They're looking at what is the long-term aspect of the economy. If they lower the interest rates, then it means a lot of liquidity in terms of cash being unlocked by banks, means also companies are able to borrow. There's a wider pool of funds to borrow, and banks become more and more attractive in terms of the lending abilities.